Alright, so I guess I should start from the beginning. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for about 10 years now. We've got a daughter, Emily, who's about 13, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty normal, stable life. Work, family dinners, the occasional argument, but nothing too crazy. I always considered Lisa a little high maintenance, but she was my wife, and I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. Things started feeling off a few months ago, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Lisa had been acting strangely distant, more irritable, snapping at me over small things, and she seemed to be hiding her phone more than usual. I noticed her canceling plans with friends, and she'd come up with lame excuses like, "I'm too tired," or "I don't feel like it." I remember telling myself she's just stressed with work or whatever, but deep down, I was getting suspicious. Then there were the little things. Her phone was always locked, and she'd quickly hide it if I walked into the room. She started leaving her phone in her purse when she went to bed, which was unlike her. I'd catch her glancing at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, and I swear I saw a few texts pop up that she quickly deleted. Nothing concrete, but enough to make me uneasy. It was like a puzzle I couldn't quite finish. One day, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. Nothing explicit, but I saw a string of messages with her coworker, this guy named Ryan from her office. The texts were flirtatious, teasing, and a little too intimate. I felt a punch to the gut. I was mad, confused, and hurt all at once. I kept thinking, how could she do this after everything we've been through? But I told myself maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just harmless flirting, a stupid mistake. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, that little seed of doubt was growing, and I knew I needed to find out more. I kept my eyes open, watching her, trying to catch her in the act or find some clear proof. Then it happened. I was scheduled to go to the dentist that day for Emily's checkup, and Lisa said she'd come with us. While she was in the waiting room filling out paperwork, I decided to go into her purse. I wasn't planning to snoop that much, but I figured if she was hiding something, maybe I'd find a note, a receipt, or something that pointed to an affair. I rummaged through her bag and found her phone. I checked her messages, her photo, whatever I could see. That's when I saw the message from Ryan pop up again. But this time, it wasn't just flirtation. It was a plan, an invitation to meet up after work to go somewhere private, and he specifically mentioned their little secret. My heart stopped. This wasn't just innocent chatting. This was more, much more. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My hands were trembling as I stared at the screen. How long had this been going on? Was I blind? Did I miss the signs? I felt a mixture of anger and heartbreak. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, but I kept calm because I knew I had to deal with this carefully. I quietly put her phone back into her purse and waited for her to come out. I was supposed to be the calm, rational one, but inside I was boiling. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. I just knew I couldn't keep living like this, wondering whether my wife was cheating on me with our daughter's orthodontist or whoever else she was fooling around with. That's when I realized this was going to change everything. When Lisa finally stepped out of the exam room, she looked at me with that fake smile she always wore when she was trying to hide something. She had that tight-lipped look, the one she used when she wanted to pretend everything was fine, but I knew better. She asked how Emily was doing, brushed past me with a sort of dismissive attitude, and then said she needed to run a quick errand before we left. I watched her walk away, emotion bubbling inside me, anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of hurt I couldn't quite process at that moment. I stayed seated in the waiting area, pretending to look at my phone, but inside I was doing the math. I had the proof I needed, and it was crystal clear now. My wife was cheating on me, not just flirty texts, but plans to meet up somewhere private. Her words about reviewing treatment options were bullshit. She'd been with Ryan, and I had the evidence right there in her phone. When she returned, her face was all smiles again, but I couldn't look her in the eyes. I was numb. We left the dentist's office in silence, Emily babbling about her braces, unaware of the storm brewing between her parents. I knew I had to say something, but I was waiting for the right moment. We got into the car, and I decided I'd confront her once we were home, when I could be alone with her and not worried about Emily overhearing. The drive was the longest 5 minutes of my life. Every bump in the road felt like a punch to my stomach. Every song on the radio was some cruel reminder that my life was about to change forever. I kept turning over the images in my head, her sneaking around, lying, pretending everything was fine. I wondered how long she'd been doing this, how many times she'd lied. I thought about all the times I'd trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. Once we got home, I forced myself to keep calm. I told Emily to go play in her room and made sure Lisa and I were alone in the kitchen. My hands were trembling as I looked her straight in the eyes. I didn't yell yet. I wanted to stay in control, but I couldn't hold back the anger in my voice. "So, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you've been lying to me. I saw the messages, the ones where you're planning to meet Ryan after hours in some private office. What the hell is going on?" She blinked, eyes wide with that fake innocence she always used when she was caught. "Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. You must have seen something wrong. Maybe it's just work-related. It's nothing serious." But I wasn't buying her bullshit. I could see her trying to spin her way out, twisting words, throwing in a line about how Ryan's just a friend, and how I was imagining things. That's typical Lisa, bitchy, manipulative, and always trying to throw me off when she gets cornered. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew she was cheating, that I had proof, and I wanted the truth. Her face twisted into that typical sneer she always uses when she's about to lie her ass off. "You're overreacting, Mark. This is all just a misunderstanding," she said confidently, lips curling. "You're paranoid as usual. Ryan and I were just talking about Emily's treatment. It's nothing more than that, that's all it is." I'd heard enough. I was furious, but I kept my voice at a boiling point. I told her she could keep lying, but I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I told her I was done being played for a fool, and I wanted her out of my house until she could explain herself properly. I felt a mix of betrayal and disgust, knowing she'd lied to my face so many times before, and now I had solid proof that she'd been screwing around with our daughter's orthodontist during her routine appointments. She spat back at me that I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that I was just jealous because I was too insecure to handle her success at work. That's her go-to line, try to make me feel like the crazy one. Like I was imagining everything, but I knew better now. I felt the cold reality settle deep inside me. This wasn't just a mistake or some harmless flirtation. She'd been sneaking around with Ryan, planning secret meetups, and I'd been none the wiser. I told her she could take everything she wanted, just leave, and don't come back until she was ready to be honest. I couldn't believe I was even saying that, but I knew I needed to get her out of my life for a while to breathe and think. As she grabbed her purse and stormed out, I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the tile, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. My marriage was over in that moment, and I knew it. Whether I wanted to admit it or not, my sense of trust was shattered beyond repair. Now I was left with the aftermath. What do you do when the woman you loved turns out to be the biggest liar? And how do you even begin to process that kind of betrayal? After Lisa left, I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at the door she just slammed behind her. My mind was a tornado of rage, sadness, and confusion. I felt like I'd been hit by a train, but at the same time I was glad I finally knew the truth. The worst part was that the truth was so ugly. She'd been lying, sneaking around with Ryan, probably for months, during Emily's orthodontist visits. My wife, the woman I'd loved and trusted, was screwing around in some private office while I was sitting in the waiting room thinking she was just reviewing treatment options. I could feel the anger bubbling over, but I knew I had to keep it in check. I couldn't let her see me lose control, not yet. I had to think clearly about what to do next, about how to handle this mess she'd created. I poured myself a glass of water, took a deep breath, and sat down at the table. That's when the floodgates opened. My mind kept replaying that moment in the dentist's office, her sneering face, her lies, her little games. Every moment I'd trusted her, every promise she'd broken, crashed over me like a tidal wave. It was hard to accept that she'd been lying to me for so long. All those late nights, her excuses, her business trips, all fake. She'd been screwing Ryan, her coworker, in her off hours, and she'd been doing it right under my nose during times I thought she was out doing something innocent. The thought made my stomach churn. I kept asking myself, how deep did this go? How long had she been cheating? Did she even care about me? About Emily? Or was this just some sick game to her? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. I felt betrayed, like she'd stabbed me in the back, not just once, but repeatedly. I'd always been the one to hold our family together, to work hard and make sure Emily had everything she needed. Meanwhile, Lisa was out lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back. I wanted to scream, but I held it in, knowing that wouldn't help anything. I knew I needed evidence. If I was going to confront her properly or even consider a divorce, I had to be sure. So I turned to her phone again, digging through her messages, her emails, her photo gallery. I wanted every detail, proof that I could show her, or maybe just remind myself that I wasn't imagining things. I found some more flirtatious texts, some suggestive photos, and even a few messages where she was planning their next secret meetup. It was all right there, laid bare. I felt like my blood was boiling. I was furious at her, but I was also deeply hurt. How could she do this to us? Our daughter. Did she even think about what this was doing to me? To her? I kept asking myself if I'd gone wrong somewhere, if I'd missed the signs, or if I'd just been blind all along. The idea that the woman I'd loved and trusted was capable of this level of deception was almost too much to handle. That night, I stayed up, catching myself replaying every moment, every word, every glance she'd given Ryan. I was plotting, trying to figure out what I should do next. I knew I couldn't just pretend everything was fine anymore. I had to act, but I wasn't sure what that was yet. I was angry enough to want revenge, but I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to make a rash decision I'd regret later. Deep down, I knew this was the beginning of a long, painful road. I'd never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I was, standing at the crossroads of my marriage, my family, and my own sanity. I had to decide whether to fight, to forgive, or to walk away. And honestly, I didn't know if I was ready for any of it. All I knew was that my life, our life, had just been turned upside down, and I was trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together if I even wanted to. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. My mind was still spinning from everything that had happened the night before. I kept thinking about Lisa, the way she lied, the way she looked at me with that fake smile, her sneering tone when she insisted it was all nothing. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. All those years I thought we were solid, that I was doing right by her and Emily. Turns out, I was just another fool in her game. I decided I couldn't just sit around mulling over it. I needed to get some clarity, so I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and started calling some friends I trusted. I needed advice, someone who could tell me what to do. But honestly, I didn't want to tell just anyone. I needed someone who'd understand the betrayal, someone who wouldn't judge me for feeling like I wanted to burn everything down. While I was on the phone, I realized I couldn't keep hiding what I knew. I had to confront Lisa again, face her head on, but this time with a plan. I decided I'd go visit her at her office later that day. Not to accuse her again, but to see her in her natural environment, to observe her, maybe catch her in a lie if she tried to deny it again. I wanted to see how she behaved when she thought I wasn't watching, how she interacted with Ryan, and whether she was still sneaking around. I spent the morning preparing myself mentally. I told Emily I was taking her to a friend's house for a playdate, so I could have some privacy. I wanted to keep things low-key, but I knew I couldn't just walk in and start yelling or accusing her. No, I had to be strategic. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about getting real answers, and if she was still sneaking around, I needed to see proof, undeniable proof. When I finally drove to her office, I was nervous as hell. I parked a few blocks away so she wouldn't see me coming, then walked over, trying to steady my breathing. I saw her through the window, sitting at her desk, typing away on her computer, the same bitchy smirk she always had when she was annoyed. She looked normal, professional, like she wasn't hiding a secret affair. That made me angrier. She was acting like everything was fine, like she wasn't screwing Ryan in some private office while I was sitting at home worrying about bills and our daughter's braces. I didn't go inside right away. I kept my distance, watching her for a bit, trying to read her mood. She looked a little tense, like she was hiding something, but she was also acting like it was just another ordinary day. That made me realize she was confident she'd gotten away with everything that she could. Keep lying and I wouldn't find out. That pissed me off even more. Eventually, I decided I had enough. I walked into the office trying to stay calm, but my voice came out a little shaky. "Hey, Lisa." She looked up surprised. Her face instantly hardened, that bitchy sneer returning. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see you," I said, trying to keep my tone even. I needed to talk, alone, without Emily around, just us. Her eyes narrowed and she looked like she was trying to come up with some clever excuse. "Look, Mark," she started, her tone sharp. "I don't know what you're fishing for, but I am busy. If you're here to cause trouble, just leave." I took a deep breath. I knew I couldn't let her spin her lies again. "Lisa, I saw the messages. I know what you're doing. You're still screwing Ryan. You're planning your next meetup, right? You're lying through your teeth, and I'm not going to let you keep pretending everything's fine." She blinked, then scoffed. "Seriously, you're crazy if you think I'd do that. You're just jealous, probably insecure, trying to accuse me of something I haven't done. Ryan and I, we're just colleagues. That's it, you're overreacting." I felt my fists clench. I was furious that she was trying to deny everything, to gaslight me like she always did. I told her I had proof, that I wasn't imagining things, and that I'd be damned if I let her keep lying. I told her I was done pretending everything was okay, that she needed to be honest with herself and with me. Her face twisted into that familiar sneer, and she told me I was a jealous, insecure mess who couldn't handle her success. That I was just paranoid and making a scene for no reason. That she loved me, but I was too stupid to see it. She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, that I was blowing things out of proportion, and that she'd only ever been faithful to me. But I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her hands trembled just a little. At that moment, I realized she wasn't going to tell the truth, no matter what I said. She was going to keep her secrets, keep screwing Ryan, and keep pretending everything was fine. I turned around and left her office, feeling emptier than I had in years. I didn't say a word as I walked out, just feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had proof now, undeniable proof, and I knew my life was never going to be the same. How could I trust her again? How could I ever look at her the same way? That day, I learned a hard lesson. Never ignore the signs. Never assume the person you love is perfect. Because sometimes they're just hiding a secret life behind a pretty face. And once you find out, everything changes forever. After I left her office that afternoon, I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. Everything was crashing down around me. I was furious, hurt, and honestly completely lost. How did my marriage get to this point? How could Lisa have betrayed me so badly, so blatantly, right in front of my face? I kept replaying her sneering denial, her fake innocence, and the way she tried to gaslight me into doubting what I saw. I drove home in a daze, not really thinking about where I was going, but just needing to get away from her, from the lies, from the betrayal. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I knew I had to face Emily, who was probably wondering why I'd been gone so long. But I also knew I couldn't hide from what I'd uncovered. I had the evidence. I had everything I needed to confront her properly. That evening, after Emily was put to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at my phone, trying to decide my next move. The truth was, I was torn between wanting to confront Lisa again and just cutting my losses. I couldn't imagine living under the same roof with her anymore, knowing what she'd done. But part of me wanted to hear her admit it, face her head on, and maybe get some answers. The thing was, I wasn't sure if she'd ever truly own up to it. I decided I needed to have a serious talk, the kind that would decide the future of our marriage. I called her, told her I wanted to talk face to face, something that didn't happen often, given how she usually dismissed me or brushed me off. She hesitated, trying to act like everything was fine, like it was just a misunderstanding, but I knew better. I told her she needed to come home now and don't bother making excuses. When she arrived, she looked surprised to see me so serious. I could see that fake bitchy smirk flickering on her face, like she thought she was going to manipulate her way out of this again. I didn't give her the chance. I laid it all out. The messages, the plans, the proof that she'd been screwing Ryan during her orthodontist appointments. I told her I knew she'd lied to my face, that I'd caught her red-handed, and that I wasn't going to pretend everything was okay anymore. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, then started with the lies. "You're overreacting," she said. "This is just a stupid misunderstanding. You're insecure, Mark. You're jealous because I'm successful, because I look good. Ryan is just a colleague, a friend, nothing more." I clenched my fists. I was so sick of her pretending she was the victim. I told her to stop with the bullshit. I said I didn't want a liar for a wife, and I sure as hell didn't want her sneaking around behind my back anymore. I told her I was done, finished with the lies, and I wanted her out of my house. That's when she snapped. She got bitchy, started shouting, telling me I was a stupid man who couldn't handle her success. She called me insecure, that classic line, and said I was just jealous because I couldn't keep her happy. I looked at her and realized she'd been lying for so long, she didn't even know what the truth was anymore. Or maybe she just didn't care. I told her she was leaving and not coming back until she was honest with herself. That night, I sat alone in the living room, feeling emptier than I ever had before. I knew I had to decide whether to fight for the marriage, to forgive her, or to cut her out of my life for good. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and honestly scared of what was coming next. But deep down, I knew one thing. Lisa had destroyed the trust that held us together, and rebuilding that trust was going to be a hell of a lot harder than I ever imagined. The days that followed were a blur of chaos and heartbreak. I kept replaying everything in my mind: her sneering lies, the secret meetings, the way she'd looked at Ryan like he was some prize she'd won. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this deep, burning anger. Every time I thought of her in the office, sneaking off, pretending to review treatment plans, I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she betray her own daughter, our marriage, everything we built? I moved out of the bedroom, sleeping in the guest room, trying to keep my distance. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was the fact that she thought she could hide it forever, that her lies would never catch up with her. I knew I couldn't stay under the same roof, not until she was willing to face the reality of what she'd done. I couldn't stand the thought of her lying, manipulating, and sneaking around while I was at home, feeling like a fool. I spent days talking to my lawyer, trying to figure out what my options were. I knew I wanted to divorce her, but I also wanted to make sure I protected myself and Emily. The thought of her running away with Ryan or trying to manipulate the situation made my stomach turn. I had to be smart about this, but I also knew I couldn't stay silent forever. I needed to be clear with her. This wasn't just a fling or some mistake. She'd broken something fundamental between us. One evening, I sat her down again. I was tired, emotionally drained, but I forced myself to be direct. I told her that I knew the truth, that I was filing for divorce, and that I wanted her out of my life, permanently. Her reaction was a mixture of anger, defiance, and that typical bitchy smirk that she always used to cover her guilt. She argued, she lied, she tried to say it was all my fault, like that would somehow make what she did okay. But I was done listening. I told her she had to leave, and she did. She packed her things, throwing a tantrum about how she deserved better, how I was just insecure, how she was the victim. But I didn't care. I was numb to her words. I knew I'd never be the same after this, and honestly, I didn't want to be. I wanted peace, and I wanted to rebuild my life without her constant lies hanging over me. The aftermath was tough. I had to explain to Emily that her mother was gone for good, that she wouldn't be coming back. That was the hardest part, seeing her little face, full of confusion and sadness, knowing I had to do what was best for her even if it meant tearing my own heart apart. I promised her I'd be there, that everything would be okay, but inside I was still reeling. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. I can't change what Lisa did, but I can control how I move forward. I've come to accept that some betrayals run too deep, and love isn't always enough to fix what's broken. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I'd say, don't ignore the signs. Listen to your gut and don't be afraid to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and your peace of mind are what matter most. Trust is precious. Once it's gone, rebuilding is a long, hard road, but surviving it is possible. And sometimes walking away is the only way to find peace again.